危险，好危险！那个交警。
Typhoon Matmo unleashes havoc across southern China, leaving thousands. Stranded southern China faced one of its most challenging weekends in recent memory as Typhoon Matmo tore through coastal provinces, transforming bustling cities into disaster zones and leaving hundreds of thousands of residents scrambling for safety. The monster storm slammed into Zhanjiang County in Guangdong Province late Saturday night with the fury of nature at its most unforgiving. Packing winds that screamed at 151 kilometers per hour and gusts that surged beyond 180 kilometers per hour. Matmo didn't just arrive, it announced itself with devastating force across Guangdong and Hainan provinces. What made this storm particularly challenging wasn't just its raw power. The timing couldn't have been worse. As millions of Chinese citizens prepared to celebrate National Day holidays with family reunions and travel plans, Matmo had other ideas. Airports became impromptu shelters, train stations turned into waiting rooms of uncertainty, and thousands of travelers found themselves stranded far from home. Before the storm even touched land, its outer bands were already wreaking havoc. Cities like Haikou, Sanya, and Zhanjiang were drenched with over 250 millimeters of rainfall, turning streets into rivers and testing the limits of urban drainage systems.
Oh, 越嚟越厲害啦，係。哦，上到個上邊咯。
When the full force of Matmo arrived, coastal communities bore the brunt of nature's assault. Imagine 5-meter waves, taller than a 2-story building, crashing relentlessly against sea walls. That's exactly what coastal residents witnessed as seawater breached embankments and flooded streets, ports, and farmlands.
I 把那个雨吹的，我的妈呀！那个龙卷风一样，哟，赶紧离开这个地方，万一飞个东西进来砸住。放灭那个来吗？
Fishing villages that had weathered countless storms found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of this particular typhoon. In the cities, the scenes were equally chaotic. Haikou residents described howling winds that sent debris flying like missiles through the air. People barricaded themselves indoors while watching their familiar cityscape transform into something unrecognizable. Delivery trucks were flipped like toys in Sanya. Market stalls were torn apart, and fishermen's boats, lifelines for coastal communities, were smashed against piers like driftwood. The infrastructure damage painted a grim picture. Traffic lights twisted into abstract sculptures, billboards shredded to ribbons, and roofs torn from homes like paper from a notebook. Trees that had stood for decades were uprooted in moments, crashing onto parked vehicles and blocking major arteries. Perhaps most critically, electrical poles toppled, plunging tens of thousands of homes into darkness that lasted well into the next day. Recognizing the severity, authorities didn't hesitate. More than 300,000 people were evacuated from vulnerable areas before the worst hit. Emergency shelters opened their doors across affected regions, providing refuge for families fleeing the storm's wrath. When Matmo finally passed, thousands of firefighters, police officers, and military personnel mobilized immediately, working around the clock to clear debris and restore essential services. The agricultural sector took a particularly heavy blow. Banana plantations lay flattened, rubber trees were uprooted, and vegetable farms were destroyed. With tens of thousands of hectares affected, local farmers now face the daunting task of rebuilding their livelihoods from scratch. As cleanup efforts continue and power is gradually restored, meteorologists have issued a sobering warning. Matmo's remnants aren't finished yet.